Very good evening to everyone. We are here with yet another session. And today's session is not about something which is practical, something which we have to think as a student and as a medical practitioner also. So, we will discuss today's topic, which is be explained by Anshita Singh, who is pursuing a bachelor degree in psychology from Delhi University. The infinite loop of curiosity keeps her on her feet to seek more, and that's the spirit which we have called her that you come on our platform and share your experiences in the learning, what you have experienced from the last 2 or 3 years in your degree, bachelor degrees. And beginner in coding and a mental health advocate and a research enthusiast, and she believes in brewing skills. And these kind of words, I think it's not enough to introduce you, but the topic what we are talking about, that would much more elaborate the work you are going. So thank you so much, Anshita, to come on our platform.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. I mean, whatever work you all are doing, I went through a few videos and it was really nice to, come across such people who are actually don't really care about what platform or what degree you have, but it's just about sharing what you're learning. And, I think that's a very important thing that you all are doing. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you, and we will start your presentation or your topic now.
Okay, just a second. Is my screen visible?
Yeah.
Okay, just a second. Okay, so mirror neurons is something that we don't usually come across while studying or reading. It's not in a lot of syllabus, and nobody really talks about it. In fact, like in my presentation, I will be covering the view of V.S. Ramachandran. He is one of the leading neurobiologists. He is Indian, but then right now he's based in California, and his researches have been very pioneering in phantom limbs, and just in general he has been trying to answer consciousness and how our brain works and neurons and all of that. So he mentions that the discovery, he didn't discover mirror neurons. It was a group of Italian neurobiologists who discovered mirror neurons. But then V.S. Ramachandran mentions that the discovery of mirror neurons are very underrated. I mean, the discovery in itself isn't being talked about a lot. And when I came across this topic, I was really fascinated because it answers a lot of questions. It's somewhat, the way that we understand unconscious mind, it sort of changes that. So there are times when there are two people talking, there's just two people in a meeting, and then somehow this other person is exactly sitting in the same position that the person in front of them is sitting in. And so another example would be when we yawn. Yawns are contagious, right? If I see somebody yawn, I'll also start yawning. So how does these things work can be answered by mirror neurons. So before talking about what mirror neurons exactly is, I will talk about what consciousness is. So what is consciousness? Consciousness is everything you experience. It is the tune stuck in your head, the sweetness of chocolate mousse, the throbbing pain of a toothache, the fierce love for your child, and the bitter knowledge that eventually all feelings will end. The origin and nature of these experiences sometimes is referred to as qualia. uh, it has been a mystery from the earliest days that what exactly these experiences are, or what exactly um, consciousness is. Um, Understanding consciousness, many modern analytic philosophers of mind, most prominently Daniel Dennett of Tufts University, find the existence of consciousness such an intolerable affront to what they believe should be a meaningless universe of matter and the void, that they declare it to be an illusion. So, a lot of philosophers, a lot of psychologists who are not able to answer considerably, or who are not able to see what consciousness is. They just announce it to be an illusion, and that it cannot really be studied scientifically. So there are also, like, because of this conception, because of this understanding, the idea of consciousness, understanding consciousness has in itself divided people into groups. Somebody say that, okay, there's more to consciousness, we need to just dig deeper. But then there are also people who discredit the entire idea of consciousness. um, Creatures of consciousness. So I'd say, um, when we talk about these things, sentience, wakefulness, self-consciousness, what it is like, consciousness, what it is like, subject of conscious states, transitive consciousness. So these are states of consciousness which are divided amongst the organisms that we see around us. So sentience is consciousness in the generic sense, the simple understanding of being a creature and just surviving. Then wakefulness is what we do. We realize that, okay, this is something that is called being awake, or this is something that is not being awake. So if a jellyfish is in sea water, would it even know that it is awake or not? Then there's self consciousness. So we as human beings have a certain self of a certain sense of consciousness. We know that, okay, the person that is talking, the person that I'm seeing in the camera right now is me. And but then dogs or monkeys, they don't have that level of self consciousness. They won't recognize ki, okay, if I look into a mirror, then this is what I'm doing, and this is whatever is happening in the mirror, whatever I see, it is ultimately me. Then what it is like, it this aspect of consciousness is something that it is like to be a creature. Because so if I'm a human, I have a sense of society, that this is what humans do and this is what animals do. So if a dog cleans the ground before sitting, then that is something dogs do. So it is about understanding what consciousness is like, in the sense of being together with people who have the similar stage of consciousness, or organisms which have similar stage of consciousness. Subject of conscious states. To define the notion of a conscious organism in terms of conscious states, one might first define what makes a mental state a conscious mental state. So subject of conscious states would be, the state where I understand that, if I'm conscious or not, if I can perceive something or not. So a concept of conscious organism would depend upon the particular account one gives of conscious states. It would be that if I'm able to comprehend what I'm experiencing, if I'm able to express what I'm experiencing, then it is one of the subjects of consciousness. Then transitive consciousness. So this here we talk about dreaming. So dream is an alternate conscious state, or being under the influence of drug. It is a separate form of consciousness. So how do we define those tiers of consciousness? That comes under transitive consciousness. The neurology of consciousness. So here, Dr. V.S. Ramachandran takes a very peculiar take on understanding consciousness. It is about understanding um, consciousness from the sense of neurobiology. So what he says is that, uh, although it is just the neurons which are firing, which are leading us to understanding this is what something has to be done, or this is what is happening, but then is neurons, or our firing of neurons, just the only thing that contributes to us being conscious? I mean, I realize that, okay, if I need to spread my arms like this, then there is certain set of neurons that is being fired, because of which I'm doing that. So that is the neurological aspect of consciousness. He says a consciousness arises not from the entire brain, but from certain neural networks or circuits. So in the recent years, it has been discovered that it is not the entire brain that contributes to our consciousness. It is just certain areas, more specifically the temporal lobe is what specifically contributes to the brain being conscious. So I'll read out from his blog only. He wrote something like, It has been suggested by Horace Barlow, Nick Humphrey, David Premack, and Marvin Minsky that consciousness may have evolved primarily in a social context. So, this is the second point. Minsky speaks of a second parallel mechanism that has evolved in humans to create presentations of earlier representations. And Humphrey has argued that our ability to introspect may have evolved specifically to construct meaningful models of other people's minds in order to predict their behavior. I feel jealous in order to understand. So, here's an example that he has put forward. I feel jealous in order to understand what jealousy feels like in someone else, a shortcut to predicting someone's behavior. So when these scientists say that a consciousness may have evolved in a social context, what they're trying to say is that perhaps as we developed as a society, as we evolved as a society, the idea of ourselves developed first, and then later on, after evolution, people understood, okay, this is what feelings are, or this is what emotions are, or this is what being our own self is, which is very logical, because if we see the earliest species like bacteria from where we developed, or apes from where we developed, they don't have that level of consciousness, and we have evolved from them only. So it's pretty logical to understand that it's first the concept of self that has evolved, and then later on we have understood consciousness to be a part of ourselves. So he's Dr. Ramachandran. Like he has done some amazing work. I mean, I recently read his book Phantoms in the Brain, and that was when I got intrigued with the idea of consciousness in a more neurological sense. So you all can check that out too. Um, so as I mentioned, that consciousness is a result of evolutionary advancement. There are several aspects of self. Now, he talks about self in the sense that when we are conscious about ourselves, that is what brings about the sense of self. Now, self also has a lot of identities, be it my body, be it an understanding of myself, or be it comparing others to myself, or looking at others and then realizing this is myself and this is the other self. Uh, the most striking aspect of consciousness, or the idea of self, is that self is aware of itself. When I'm saying that this is me, or this is my hand, or this is myself, or this is my thoughts, then it is me who is saying that I'm aware of my thoughts. Like it's very elaborate, and it's pretty so it is something that you really need to think about, because when you say self is aware of the self, then it's like I it's me only who's aware of my hands, or it's me only who's aware of my thoughts. So it's like self being aware of the self. Okay, so when he mentions, I missed a thing. Yeah, okay. So when he mentioned that self has aspects, then this is where he uses mirror neurons to explain the self. What he says is that mirror neurons uh, are because of which we understand ourselves. It's like, so basically the discovery of mirror neurons was done by a group of Italian neurobiologists, and what they were trying to do was they were looking at a group of monkeys, and they were reading their brain activity. So what happened was, when a monkey was handed out a banana to eat, a certain group of neurons fired in his brain, and the other monkey who was watching the monkey receive a banana, a group of those similar neurons fired in that monkey's brain. So it's like the monkey who was watching the other monkey receive a banana had same set of neurons fire in him, and the monkey who was receiving the neurons, like both the neurons that fired were the same. So this raises a very very concerning question, that so basically the brains are communicating through these set of neurons. So uh, even when I'm moving my hands, animating and talking, so whatever set of neurons my brain is firing, a set of similar neurons will be fired in your brain also. So this is a very very huge discovery, and it is also called, like, mirror neurons are also called mind reading neurons. So and why V.S. Ramachandran mentions that this discovery hasn't been given enough creditation is because it hasn't been come into limelight, or it hasn't been discussed further. And the application of mirror neurons is huge. So in his recent in one of his interviews, he mentioned that he is trying to use these mirror neurons to treat OCD. So basically, he ran a study wherein there were OCD. There were people who were suffering with OCD, and they had a tendency to wash their hands every other minute. So what he did was, instead of letting them wash their hands, he just showed them somebody washing their own hands. So it was observed that about 50% of those people who were shown the video, they were able to control their urge to wash their hands. So it's pretty revolutionary. So this is where our mirror neurons located. Cross-modal abstraction, inferior parietal lobule, supramarginal gyrus, angular gyrus. These are parts of the brain where mirror neurons are located. Mirror neurons and consciousness. Yes. So when when we say that mirror neurons help us look inward, it's because you understand, while looking at other people, how your brain works, right? Then there are interaction of mirror neurons and interaction of brains. This is what I mentioned, that if I do something and uh, a certain aspect of my neurons are fired, then the similar set of neurons are fired in your brain. So it is something like my brain is communicating to yours. Mirror neurons, obviously, V.S. Ramachandran also mentions this, that mirror neurons may not be the only reason for consciousness or self-awareness. There are, of course, other reasons that contribute to consciousness. Okay, so this is I suppose that this can be the future aspect of understanding mirror neurons. So if we go ahead and proceed with the findings about mirror neurons, then we could probably end up talking to each other, because if my brain can communicate with yours even at such subliminal levels, then who knows, we can untap and reveal something that is that we end up, just talking through telepathy. I mean, I think something and then you end up thinking something similar, and we could just communicate with mirror neurons. And I think that is it. Like, concluding, I would like to say that although I have just covered one perspective of mirror neurons, which was given by V.S. Ramachandran, I would definitely suggest you all to check his studies out. He's done some amazing work, and you all can also check about and read more about mirror neurons and all of that. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And there is a very, I can say, very sweet and short presentations of the way you have explained mirror neurons. It's not my doubt, it's just curiosity. Like, you are pursuing your bachelor's in psychology. So, how you would prefer this telepathy to be connected with consciousness, or how you will deal with if any persons comes to you and he asks about telepathy? So, how you will convince that person, yeah, telepathy works, or telepathy is something which is a very good concept?
Right. So the fact that, so telepathy, why I didn't believe in telepathy, of course, before coming across mirror neurons. But then if you look at it, the proof to the existence of mirror neurons are endless. They have biological proofs. They have other, behavioral proofs. So, like, in the beginning also, I gave this example that if I'm yawning, you start yawning too, or if I'm smiling, you look at me and you'll start smiling too. And then there are times when two people are having a conversation, they would end up in a similar position. Like, if my hand here, then your hand would probably also, get here. So these are a very subliminal examples of mirror neurons. And earlier it was always attributed to the unconscious mind, what Freud put forward. But then there has come out to be a neurological proof. And if I need to convince about telepathy, then of course, if not now, it could be a futuristic aspect, because we haven't really been able to understand our brains ourselves. I mean, it's a very complex machinery, and it's just 1 or 2% of the brain that we really know about, and there's so much more going on inside the brain. So if we are someday able to tap into other aspects of the brain, then I think it's definitely possible, because even on sub even on such subliminal levels, our brains are communicating. So we never know that we won't eventually need our mouths to communicate, and we would just have our brains talking and carrying out conversations.
I hope this concept or this theory becomes so true in the coming future, and that would be very beneficial for the clinical experts. Maybe
Right.
not now to understand, but when we think about on a clinical aspects as a doctor or as a clinician, it is a very good concept that as a clinician, if he knows how to understand that mirror neuron concept, it is really nice to understand.
Yes, I mean, I would like to add here that the fact that studies have found the application of mirror neurons, it could be subliminally used by therapists and counselors to instigate that sense of action or that behavior in the other person. Um, they could do a certain task, and subliminally, probably the client or the person who's seeking help would also end up doing the same thing.
Yeah. So that was a, I really do not have the words to, it's like jumble words, kind of mirror neuron concept happened to me. I hope so. I just wanted to thank to Anshita that she had covered a very nice concept and very new concept as a mirror neurons to me or to the whole entire the students who will listen to this or who are going to have these presentations with them. So I congratulate and thanks to Anshita that she came to our platform and spare some amount of time. Thank you, Anshita.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for having me.